Lori Bryant, Purchasing Director, Clarksville-Montgomery County School System. Lori Bryant has over 20 years experience in procurement, both public and private sectors. For the past 16 years, she has worked in municipal K-12 school purchasing departments, covering almost all aspects of procurement. She is currently the Purchasing Director of the Clarksville-Montgomery County, Tennessee School System, where she procures a variety of goods and services for 42 schools and supporting departments. Lori holds a bachelor's degree from Lambeth University and a certified professional public bar certification from UPPCC. She is a member of Tennessee Association Public Purchasing and NIGP. Lori serves as TAP's Communications Committee Chair and Web Ambassador, and she is a TAP past President and Treasurer. She was pleased to serve on the 2018 Forum Local Planning Committee, where she got to promote Nashville to the forum attendees as the Communications Committee Co-Chair, aka the Voice of Tennessee. In July 2019, Lori will begin a 3-year term on NIGP's member council, which is very exciting for all of us. Lori?
Yay!
Okay, so you all know what the Roundtable is. We have decided, we've done this for a number of years. We know that the answer to all of our questions is here in this room from you all. So today we are seeing what treasures await in the community chest, which is you all.
Nice.
The first question we had was on RFP pricing evaluation. I had several people that did submit questions to us, so we'll go through those. If we have time, we can take other questions from the floor. This one asked about the pros and cons of having the price submitted separately from the proposal, or not showing the evaluation team, and not showing the evaluation team until completion of scoring on all other criteria. How many of you do that type of evaluation? Some of you? Yeah. Okay. Who does? So you don't show the evaluation team members what the amounts are before they score. Who does something else?
I do a lot of things.
You do a lot of. I do a lot of things too. Yeah, but yeah, what? Kind of tell them a little bit about what you do.
Well, it really depends on what we're sending the RFP out for. So we might ask for price. Obviously, price is not going to weigh more than the experience of the company. So we may factor in price into the evaluation. On some of them, we will ask for the price to be in a separate sealed envelope, and then it will be opened once they select the highest rated vendor, so to speak. And other times we don't ask for it at all. We just select based on, the criteria that we set forth, which could be anything. So we just do this huge mixture. It just really depends on what we're doing.
So let's talk about some pros and cons of this then. So what are some pros of hiding the cost before, from your evaluation team before they have scored the rest of the technical evaluation? They're not thinking about the budget.
They can be biased. A lot of them judge on who tried to underscore you or something like that, or come in low.
They're looking at the skills and qualifications of the company versus actually setting the cost and letting that be their main focus in that evaluation. So it's important for us because it allows us to have quality suppliers and that.
So they're focusing on the skills. Yeah. Anything else? What are some disadvantages to this? Anything that you think of?
Sometimes we use a criteria, what I've called pricing clarity, and it's not about the value of the pricing. It's about, is the pricing quoted in a way that's easily administered over the life of the contract? And if the evaluators can't see what the pricing is, they can't evaluate whether the pricing clarity is what we want it to be.
That's interesting.
Procurement will see the pricing, but the evaluating committee does it just in case everybody did way over the budget. Because we have a cost model, before it goes out, we have a cost model to make sure we can slide pricing where it needs to be evaluated. But if it's way over the budget, we can go to the chairman and say, you might need to look at the specification or something like that a little bit more detailed because it may not work in the budget.
But isn't that the purpose of the RFP, is to be able to negotiate what you want and what you need?
Well, see, for us, cost is always number one. It always weighs heavier. So instead of letting everyone see the pricing and then they evaluate other things and try to make it fit under the person that they want, because pricing for us is always outweighs. You can get real close, but it always has to be 2 or 3% more than everything else in the RFP. So we just hold the pricing to make you use all the qualifications or whatever else she's put in your cost model, but you'll evaluate it without looking at it.
That's unfortunate that you have to base everything on cost.
Well, it outweighs everything. Everything else has a percentage out of 100. So you've got 100, so you can make it 25, but everything else under that has to be 16, 15. Nothing can be over whatever
the total.
The total out of 100, so
Gotcha.
it has to outweigh
Okay.
everything. It has to be more. So if it's 35, everything, you can have 4 other categories, but they can't, no one category can be over 35.
Where are you from?
Any of that, the Nashville Liquor Service.
That's, I guess you're not home rule. Well, I guess you're making your own policy on that.
Well, yeah, because we go with price, basically we go cost effective. Everything is pretty much cost based. So we use cost as the number one rule. It doesn't have to be like real the committee can subdivide 4 or 5 things. Just one category cannot be over the cost. So you can have 60% be something else, but it has to be broken up into 4 of the things to evaluate.
Because when I was working years ago, and it was a municipality purchasing manager manages it now, I had a problem with everything was bid for the small municipality. So I went to MTAS and I finally convinced them to put legislation through an RFP where it wasn't based strictly on cost or low bid, where you could negotiate, because I was having a problem with computer services. It's hard to bid computer services. So we needed to be able to tweak what we wanted and make sure that the vendor knew exactly what I needed. It wasn't based on cost. And that was that's the foundation of the RFP, and the way it's written through legislation is that it shouldn't be all based on cost, but what you need, so you can negotiate what you need, and you just pay and get the best and final offer from what you need.
Well, see, and that NES does do a lot of practicing of best and final offer. We don't do a lot of negotiation. So it's pretty much, you can make it, it doesn't say that it all has to be cost. Cost just has to weigh more. So you can subdivide everything else you're looking for. You just got, if cost is 25%, you got 4 others, they all got to be 10% or 24. They just can't be 25 or 26. So it is a factor, but it doesn't have to be the only factor. So you just have to, the committee has to be smart at what they want. If it is qualifications, maybe break qualifications into technical and then experience. And then you've got 2 that outweigh cost, but 2 different areas that you may want to look at.
So are you doing that for products and services or professional services?
It's anything that we deem as far as an RFP, because we have personal services and big other construction that go either way, just depending on the threshold of what they want to do, whether they have a committee, where they have a specification that's good enough and tight enough that we don't have to do it.
So do you do statement of qualifications, professional services?
Sometimes we do.
Yeah, so in Ontario, my agency anyway, I shouldn't say Ontario Collaborative is different, but my agency, we call this a 2 envelope system. And we do this like probably 99% of the time. What we have in our RFPs is that the evaluators get only the technical at first, and they evaluate, and only those proponents or vendors that make it over a threshold will then move to the next stage and open their pricing. So if we have 8 vendors submit, and of those 8, say 3 or 4 make it past 75% on that technical scoring, then we proceed to open that and then do the 2 together. So there may be a few that don't even make it because they weren't competent enough or didn't have, something we needed. But that's kind of how we separate.
All right, those are all good ideas. Anything else anybody has on this topic? Let's move on then, our second one. And this is my question, and somebody else asked it last night Chris asked it last night at dinner as well. Does anybody else have experience with GovSpend? Do you think you use it enough to feel it's worth the expense? And how do the results and savings justify the cost? Does anybody have any experience with it?
What is it?
It's a company that they
Like data.
it's like data mining, but they offer to you the ability to go in and compare the prices that you're getting to prices other entities have gotten as well.
Is this the same thing as Smart Procure?
Yep.
Yes,
It
that
sure
makes
is.
sense.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so-
Yeah, I'm with Brian, I shudder.
Yeah.
Does anyone in the room admit to using it? That's the problem. Like, you have the name of our.
Well, and
I
that's,
did a free trial, I
Yeah.
used it for a year, but then it wasn't working.
How much do they charge
so it wasn't
for
worth paying.
They didn't charge me anything, it was a pilot, I did the pilot.
Oh, but I mean, once
So
the,
you didn't, do you feel like you used it enough
I
to
did.
spend money on it?
No.
Okay.
I did use it.
Do you know what they wanted to charge you had you kept on after the
I
trial?
want to say it was, $1,000 a year, wasn't it? For one user?
For one user, yeah. For 5 users, they quoted me like.
and they're the
75.
company that makes me do an open records request every quarter to
Correct.
give them all their POs, all our POs.
Yeah.
Yep.
But see, that data is skewed.
Oh, yeah.
And I
of course.
told him that.
Yeah.
It's like, you have this great and wonderful data for me, but you've got a PO that says we paid US Bank. You have no idea what was on that P card.
Right,
Exactly.
yeah.
So it's not
Yeah.
helping anybody.
Yeah. I've
So
seen,
I guess the general answer is no, nobody's probably using it at this point, so that helps me. That helps us with our discussion, with our justification.
So
to
when
them,
they call,
so,
don't set up anything.
Yeah. so. All right. Move on. The next thing we want to talk about a little bit is cooperative purchasing. Somebody asked a little bit about what cooperatives we were able to use. But there's been a lot of changes in cooperative purchasing in the last year or so. So how many of you use cooperative purchasing? Yes, everybody in the room. Almost everybody uses state contracts, which is the cooperative. Omnia Partners Public Sector, which is formerly U.S. Communities,
And
National IPA, TCPN. So those have all come together to form Omnia Partners Public Sector. I actually kind of thought Omnia Partners was going to be here this week, but they apparently changed their mind. So we don't have them to talk to, but we do have, experience with U.S. Communities. When I talked to the lady from Omnia, she said we don't have to redo our participating agreements with them. You may want to go back to your boards and say we're, this has changed and we need to get them approved as well.
Yeah, we just did that actually this week. Our law department opined that we didn't have to on Sourcewell because that was just a name change from NJPA to Sourcewell, but on the Omnia deal, since it merged U.S. Communities, National IPA, and TCPN, they recommended that we go back to council, so we got it. Yeah.
I wondered about that.
Yeah. But your law department might think different. You're a lawyer. Sorry.
It's a one-man show.
So we've got Sourcewell, formerly NJPA, NASPA Value Point, TIPS, we've got Sheriff's Association from in the back there, so he'll be happy to talk to you about any of his offerings. E&I is one for schools. So any others that you all know of that you use?
Board.
Board.
HGAC.
HGAC. Okay.
NPP.gov.
I'm sorry?
NPP.gov.
NPP.gov.
We use MCAP, which is like the Minnesota something or other.
Yeah,
We use
we
it
do
for
that.
pharmaceuticals and all that.
Okay. So, basically the statute says we have to have our board or council or commission approval to do those, to use those. So, if you need to make sure that you have followed those procedures for that. Any other questions do we have? What other questions do we have about cooperatives for this year? So. Yay, let's move on. I had this question come up, and it's going to mainly be for counties regarding bidding voting machines, and it was really Susan that had asked it. So I looked up a few things on this, and so does anybody have voting machines coming up? Any of you counties coming up? Lynn does in Nashville does. Okay, you're in the process. Any tips and thoughts?
It was a rough one.
Rough one. There is some partial state and federal funding for this, so be sure that you're following your rules for federal funding. And the state establishes the guidelines for the bidding that has to happen with that. It does have to be bid just like your normal thing, even if your folks want to stay with the same company. So, and that was the direction from the attorney at the Division of Elections. So there are apparently some election commissions that are thinking, oh, we have something that's just about to be approved and it's not approved yet, but we want to go forward with it anyway, and of course, it's not happening. So, all right. The next one we have was performance metrics. So how is it that you are measuring success in your entity? What kind of things do you measure?
Nobody complained.
Turnaround time, spend analysis.
And analysis.
Yep, decrease spend.
Talk about turnaround time. When you are measuring, are you measuring from date of requisition to date of order placed?
Yes.
Or
And
what?
those that are outside that parameter, like that, although we receive it, it's not ready, it's kind of back in their corner, we take that out of the equation. But yes, we track the turnaround time on requisitions.
Your central.
Yes.
And that's for both when you are doing your own process, like a solicitation for bids or an RFP, and for when you're using a cooperative for statewide contract or something.
Yeah, it's a reporting measure.
So if you're doing one where you have a formal contract, you do it all the way to the end of the formal contract? You count the time all the way to that?
No, I consider it when purchasing has received the approval, like I'm preparing solicitations.
Okay.
From when we receive it to when it's been prepared.
Ah.
What's in our house to take care of. Kind of stop things out.
So you don't count that whole time that it's on the internet and you write
This
this
is our
team and it
performance.
goes to.
Only our
You're working
performance
twice as
time.
hard, man.
Nice.
Jolene.
Thanks, Jody.
Totally.
I just use an Excel tracking sheet. Basically, we have our official time clock. I receive a requisition. It could be for an everyday purchase, for a solicitation. Stamp it in. I enter the date, the department, a general description of what it is, and then when I go to issue the purchase order, then I mark that and I put the days on that sheet.
Could the city of Franklin open up an office in Johnson County?
Johnson City.
What do you use the tracking for?
Internal measures, city manager reports.
Yeah. We have performance measures that we're supposed to turn in every year.
That's like the first step of what Penny does.
So hers goes all the way from the day that the PO or wrapped it on the
Requisition.
internet, when we do the evaluation, and then when we cut the PO, when it goes to law, when the contract
All the way
comes
to
back, and it's
contract
all,
execution.
hers goes on for 100 years.
Yeah, which I don't like.
This only took
Yeah.
7 years and 3 months from the time we got the requisition to when. Yeah.
Yeah, which I really don't like because we end up in law for 2 months a lot of the time because of dealing with insurance issues.
That's why we try to just do once an hour.
Yeah, I would like to do it to the point it goes to council.
We don't necessarily track it that way.
Yeah.
We don't track it at all, because the way we look at it, the way we are tasked to do it is that whatever we are measuring has to add value, and then it also has to have a result that affects something. That may affect, but how does, I mean, your turnaround time is how quickly you get it out. And then where does that go? Does that go back to the user and say this?
It goes to Jim York to say we need another procurement specialist
Well,
because
yes,
it's taken 9 months to get this on the
Every
internet.
budgeting.
And guess what Jim York gave?
Right.
We were
Another
getting a second
procurement
procurement
specialist.
specialist.
Amen.
I can tell you the city of Knoxville, the work that she puts on that sheet has validated the fact that we don't have enough people.
Yeah, that has been helpful. We've been able to prove that.
Challenge is I've proved that all day long, and it doesn't get anywhere.
I know.
You need I'm just kidding.
Well, I have been there 11 years, you know, it didn't happen overnight.
uh,
So do those people then have someone else to do the contract management after the fact?
Like,
Once
once
you're
you're
done, do you guys manage the contract afterwards, or you're done?
Depending on what it is.
So that's not counted in that turnaround.
I would think it's not.
Oh, no.
I think that's what it is.
No, 'cause once it's either awarded or the contract's executed, we manage a few, there are a handful of contracts that we manage that are, you know, multiple departments or whatever.
Right, that's
But as far as administration, we let the departments administer the contract, and then if we have a problem, then our contract manager gets back involved at that point, and she handles things.
We don't have a contract manager, so that's.
I know, I'm sorry.
Is anybody tracking vendor performance or something? Vendor performance? How are you doing that?
We use SurveyMonkey to send out surveys. I've got it set up currently in the registry so that when the renewal is about 90 days out, we get notice. I have the notification set up to come to me to tell me vendor survey is due. So then we get that report back. We're able to analyze that and then determine, okay, it's a good move to renew this contract. And so then we send the renewal out to the supplier. If there are issues, we'll address them at that point.
So you do that for every contract before it renews, you do.
That's the way we've set up
With your
vendor.
users.
I'm sorry.
Who do you survey? What do you do?
We send the surveys out to the end users. We send them out to property managers and their maintenance supervisors.
Which isn't many, right?
It's, no, it's not bad. So you're able to pull an Excel sheet or, export an Excel sheet and then just analyze that data. And if they have an option to note any special circumstances that they face in that time period. And if we see that there's something we need to address, then we do it at that point.
Which is what you do, Jolene, but via email, we're not that.
Correct, yeah. And then I think it's really important, like, I mean, they can't just say when renewal comes up, they can't just say, oh, we've had horrible problems with this vendor throughout the whole contract. They have some responsibility on their end, yeah. Like, I'm sorry for you,
Yeah.
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 We would love to know on the front end.
Yeah.
However, that doesn't always happen.
Oh, yeah, I know, that's what I'm
We have
saying, yeah.
forms out, on the internet.
So
Yeah.
so here's how we fix that. And you don't have to turn the camera this way. They all
Good, because I'm having a hard time with it.
So what we've done, so we're not real good at doing it on the back end as far as at the end. We don't necessarily go out and survey the departments, but Natalie found we use this thing called jot forms. And so we've made little forms that we put on our intranet page. So the departments, we have some specific contracts that we know we've had issues with in the past and things like that. And we know we've got to really watch performance. We have them set up for those. And so it's up to the departments. If they have a problem, they can go out there and click on that particular one and they can report a problem and it goes directly to Natalie. And so then when it does come up renewal time and they're going, yeah, we don't want to. Well,
There's documentation.
hopefully.
Hopefully.
But and if there's not, we say, sorry, we don't have documentation to prove that we have a problem.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
As opposed to doing it at the end of the year,
Yeah.
just having one sheet
Yeah.
to fill out.
And we have one, like, to some specific contracts, but then we have just a general one, so they can report anything.
Jenny, what is the name of those forms?
Jot forms. It's an online, yes, JOT forms. It's not very expensive at all.
And Penny, I agree, you do need documentation that has evidence of issues
Oh, yeah.
up to that point.
Yep.
And we really try to encourage that, unfortunately, it doesn't always
I know.
happen.
I know.
So this is a record for us at least
Yeah.
at that renewal time.
Yes. We've got a right now where we've got a problem with one, and I won't mention what it is. But we've already had a meeting with them. We're getting daily reports back from the department. Through the JOT forms, which is great. Our Parks and Rec department actually was using that, and that was how we learned about it. But we had this, and so this one, it's not going well. But we had one a couple years ago where that was the case, and we got, Parks and Rec was awesome. They sent us reports daily. And within a month and a half after the contract was started, we ended up saying, sorry, this is not going to work. And we had plenty of documentation to pull it.
And we have one department that will hold all that information.
And save it until the end.
Yeah, and when Carol did contact them and say, do you want to renew this, we've got any issues, and then they bring in this composition to us.
Right, yeah.
Well, on, July 30th, we had this, and it's like, we now notify the vendor.
Yeah, they have to have an opportunity to cure. Yeah.
So y'all use that penny document and keep track of what happens.
We do.
Yep. And then that can back it up.
Yes. Yeah, I really like it. We're still struggling a bit to get departments to use it, but little at a time. And you can even, with that, you can even attach pictures too, which is really good. So mowing, janitorial, things like that, they can actually take a picture of what it was and attach that. So that's been hugely helpful.
And that's a private service?
It's just a third party, it's an online application, basically.
JOT?
Yep, JOT forms. Yep.
We started a vendor performance program within the last year, and we created a form, and goes in-house to the project manager, they fill it out, and it goes to the vendor, and they fill it out, and then back. And so we just started tracking some of the performance. We just started with the construction form, but we're getting both sides of the communication.
Lisa mentioned, moving on a little bit, some spend analytics. So do any of you do any kind of spending analytics? By commodity or?
Well, we just changed our purchasing threshold to 25,000, and I have been keeping the spend and that analytics on what we spend between certain levels and certain amounts. So that analysis I was able to take that to the board and show them, okay, these are the only purchases that we have between here and here. This is all that it affects, and it keeps it running total. The bigger thing is really pushing us, the analysis that we're doing. It's on the P-card side, trying to convert some of those POs into the P-card side so that we can get reimbursement, so that I can get a P-card administrator and save that and get those rebates in dollars, and so that I'm tracking the P-card spend and the purchase order spends that we have to adjust that. So that's what we're using. That's what we use in our business.
Okay. Anybody else doing anything similar? All right, moving on then. We had a question about facilities maintenance contracts, and how does your agency handle those things like painting and HVAC, plumbing, electrical? Do you do a competitive bid? And establish those, and how do you structure your unit pricing for that? So. And
we have a building maintenance department.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
We have an HVAC contract that we list the maintenance items that have to be done. annually or quarterly or whatever, and we have a price for those. And then we also have a price for, travel call to the facility and all that, and then a percentage markup on parts and an hourly rate for any maintenance, HVAC maintenance issues we have that aren't specific to the contract.
So you list the things that you know are supposed to happen each year, and those have a particular price, but then you also have an hourly rate and other things for additional work. Okay?
You do that as an invitation to bid?
We bid electrical and HVAC contracts for on-call services, not for a specific service, but for on-call. Their hourly rates and then markups, and then have them quote as we go. We generally will award 2 contracts for those. We have a primary and a secondary, and if the primary seems too high, we'll go to the secondary, get a check on that, and if it seems okay, or whichever's lower, we'll end up going.
So we don't do any facilities maintenance contracts, but I work also with our operations department. And we have guys on staff for certain areas, but things like electrical and painting, we don't. And I'm wondering, a lot of times when they'll do purchase orders for work, they'll find jobs that they know are underneath that $3,500 limit where they need to bid it out, but they might be, a month apart from each other, So, but they end up using a lot of the same company because they don't give them any problems. Like they do the work well, so they don't want to really go to a bidding situation. But I'm wondering, would it save our school district money by sending it out to bid? Because then that company would know that they're getting all of the business for that contract term. I mean, I'm wondering if that's something I should bring up to my operations director, because every time I see something that comes through that's like under that threshold, and I've talked with my CFO about it. She's like, well, they are different jobs, and he's technically following under what he can do. But if someone were to look in at it and say, well, you're always using this particular company, I want to try to keep.
We do a painting contract each, well, we don't do it each year, but we renew the contract. But so yeah, we do a painting contract. I don't recall off the top of my head what the unit pricing is, but but yeah, so that way that one company has the painting jobs for the school system. Now our maintenance does a lot of the painting on its own, on their own, just small things.
Right.
But yeah, when we've got a large job, they'll contact the painting company that we've contracted with. So.
Does anyone use a statewide contract on HVAC, plumbing, electrical?
We have for HVAC.
How has that worked?
It was good. Julie, did you do that one? I'm trying to think if you did that one. It worked well. We had a unit go out at one of our rec centers, and it was in the middle of the summer, so it was very, very hot. So we needed an HVAC unit really quick. And with the statewide contract, they have contractors across the state. So there were a couple of different companies in Knoxville that we were able to call and kind of compare their prices, and we went with the lower of the two. So that worked well for us.
I think Janice did that.
She might have, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Our next topic is bid bonds, and Lisa asked the question, so I've asked her to give us a little more detail about what she was wanting to.
No worries. Just a quick question of how, do you guys use your own forms, or do you allow additional forms to come in like AIA forms? And then how do you verify that a bid bond is good? What resource do you use to verify that? Huh? What?
We look at it.
We look at it. Yeah. It has a seal and it's signed. Good deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The AI bid bond is usually notarized. It has a notary seal on it. So I take that as legitimate.
but we also have our own bid bond form if they want to use that and submit a cashier's check in lieu of a bond.
Some of it comes down to the power of attorney. You know, I noticed that right where I think they say make sure it's a up to date or current power of attorney, and you know, that type of thing.
And then let's be able to practice law, or have a business resolution decision to be able to do that. Now, we didn't have an invalid bid, invalid bid bond, but it didn't pass the smell test.
No.
In that it was a copy.
Oh.
There was not a raised seal on it. And the companies were valid, but they were in Oklahoma and somewhere else. And so you're looking at it going, you know, and we ended up going to our insurance rep and say, okay, can you check this out for us just to see if it's on the up and up? And he was able to check that out. But I was wondering if anybody else had those kind of issues. We don't typically take AIA bonds because it limits the amount of responsibility. So we make them go on our forms in story. But this was a TDOT project, and TDOT specifies what form you put it on to do. And they concurred with us that it wasn't proper. It wasn't properly done. But, you know, had he done it on the form, I still would have had an issue because there wasn't a raised seal. There wasn't things that it looked like it was just somebody pulled it out of something and put it in there, and you know, and I feel like that would have been what kind of work we could have gotten probably. Maybe.
So I guess to what extent are you checking your bid bonds?
Yes.
You know, are you just looking at them? Are you verifying them through the company by contacting them? At what levels are you all?
I know Joe's behind you.
I was holding it up to the light.
It's like real paper to me. Real for me and boss.
So we may not know if we actually do have something.
Yeah,
Right?
that's true.
Right.
And of course, if they come across with the contract, smell and board anyway, so it really doesn't matter, but it does.
Derek?
You know, the bid bond, it's only worth until, it's only for 2 or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, wherever it goes before the council. The one you need to really be concentrating on is the performance bond.
Which one is?
That's the one that's really gonna count when it comes down to the meat cutting.
Well,
The bid bond, if they're gonna pull their bid, if they're gonna pull the bid, even if the bid bond's not any good, you still have your attorney, and, you know, you can do what you need to do with that.
I'll agree with that, but your contract documents state you have to have X, and that's a legal document. And so if that document is not correct, then it does have weight. It can say you're being disqualified because you did not fill this out.
That's true.
Do you do all of them?
Huh?
Do you look at all of the bid bonds or just your low bid?
We look at all of them, make sure they've got them signed, everything. Because it's part of the document, because we may end up going to the next one for some other
Well,
reason.
then you would check that when you would have to go to the next one, right?
Yeah.
But you're checking all of them?
Yeah. Pardon me?
You're checking all of them?
Yeah, we're looking at all of them.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. We're looking at all of them.
For starters, we've had some new vendors that we've been working with. So you've got some new vendors that have come into the tool.
Yeah.
And so we're looking at everything to make sure that whatever they're turning into us, that it's properly executed and that we've got the documents, because when we contacted our insurance company, I mean, sometimes it does happen, there's some fraud and things like that. So we just wanted to make sure we're checking, but we do have some new vendors we're working with. And that was
On the bid opening then, because you are checking them all, on bid opening, you would write non-responsive, and they wouldn't even go on your bid form, right? Is that what you're saying?
No.
Is why you look at them all
No,
like
so
this?
you're on your bid opening, you're looking to see if they provided it.
If it's there.
We said our bid opening,
Yeah.
we're just
Yeah.
saying, you
Exactly.
provided it, and then we'll look at everything once we get you back in our office.
Right.
So you can't deem them non-responsive unless they just don't have it.
That's my question. The question
Yes,
is,
they
you're
don't have
looking,
it.
they don't have it,
They don't have it, they're
it's
being
non-responsive, which is,
That is correct.
his response was, we don't look at them. That would be the wash.
No, we do.
No, that's not what he
When
said.
we open the bid, it's read out loud, it's recorded, and we make sure that the bid bond is there and it has a power of attorney with it.
Right.
We do that with every bid that we open. That's required. Bid bond.
And that's what we do, but we don't, if they don't, and he would do the same thing, if they don't have it, you set that over to the side because it's not a valid bid price.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
We're on the same page.
And we don't post it, we don't, if that's the case, we don't post it. Now, if it comes back, if you get back at the end, get back in your office and you look, it's not a valid bid bond. We've already had the bid tabulation out there because it's been publicly read, but we don't put it on our bid analysis. It's basically, it's not a valid bid. So it's, the money's not there and their name is there, but it's deemed non-responsive.
Carl, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just a question. I ask this question when I teach all the time. How many have actually called or cashed in the bid bond?
Threatened it. I've threatened it, but I've never called it in.
Okay.
How many of you have called on a performance bond?
We have.
Yep. Well, have called it. Have you called it?
Oh,
Oh, it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare.
Well, that's why I asked, because
Yes.
it's a lot more difficult
Yeah.
to get anything from the bonds.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
Anybody had protests because you asked for this?
Has anybody had a protest because you've asked for a bid bond?
No.
Or the bid document.
Well, we've had situations where, like, when you get into some more strategic things that we have to have, has to be done, we started to ask for a bid bond, whereas in the past, it wasn't one needed. But then we decided, hey, going forward, we need to have one because we got in a sticky situation where and a couple of vendors were upset because we wouldn't take the bid bond off. You had to have it. And they threatened us.
Yeah.
If we're gonna do it, they threatened us, but I don't think it went all the way through. We just, because we decided to require it. I think in the past we didn't. But clear cut on you when we decided to, and they were pretty upset.
They might not like it, but.
Right, I was just wondering, because we're talking about bid bonds, because we got away from in lieu of, we don't do the cashier's check. We decided not to do just flat out, no more in lieu of, so we made it clear, but they were.
We will do the in lieu of if folks ask for it on the front end. So for instance, if they come in and we've done, you have the ability to still continue to get them and they send something in saying, will you do a thing in lieu of, like on performance, on some of the other parts, proposal bonds and the other stuff.
I just wondering, from past to present, since things are changing, we didn't do it then, but we do it now. And it was like, why are you trying to keep us out? I mean, they couldn't find any basis, but it was the threat of all the way through the whole RFP and everything.
It's costly to file it, and to be honest with you, it's something else that can mess up, and mess up your bid, so I don't do it too. I tried to tell you.
All right, do you have any other questions or comments about bid bonds? We had a question submitted about mowing services, whether or not to do an ITB or an RFP on those. So, thoughts, ideas, anybody?
Show of hands, how many do an invitation to bid? How many do an RFP?
How many converted from ITB to RFP?
That's a good question. Yeah, yeah.
I've converted from the ITB to the RFP.
I made mine.
Yeah, that's why I asked the question, actually. That's all I'm saying, that's all I'm gonna say.
Be recorded, ma'am, you'll be recorded.
It is a tech field, and everybody thinks, oh, I have a lawnmower, I can mow your yard.
Exactly,
So-
yeah, and that's, we're really struggling and yeah, we're just really struggling.
We used to have in-house mowing, and then we outsourced it.
And we're looking at that too. Our public service folks are looking at, should we bring it back in-house and just hire people, so.
Yeah.
So those doing the RFP, tell us about your RFP process.
We just actually did that. For the last 15 years, we did the bid. We had a contractor for 10 years, but we didn't feel like we were getting our money's worth. And so we tracked pretty closely the issues that we were having. So we decided to go with the RFP, and we just did that. And actually, we got a better group and saved money from what we were doing, adding another additional 13 properties to it.
Wow.
Now, we still have some in-house mowing for our larger buildings, town hall, places like that. Yeah, fine cut. But for the most part, it worked really well. We did the 2 envelope system. We actually did a short list. We had 4 or 5 companies send in. We shortlisted to 2 or 3, brought them in for interviews. The interview was great because then we were able to tell them exactly what we wanted. The levels, we put levels in there. We also established, the levels and what we were asking for at different cuts and what they had to do, and it worked out really well.
Then you can send that through the TAP email system?
Sure.
Yeah. You actually mentioned it, our MBA students just did it, yeah.
Yeah, he called me.
They mentioned it, yeah.
Yeah, what we did is all the levels, we put all the properties in there and then put the levels and the seasons and how many cuts were required on it. It worked out really well. So they knew exactly what they had. And they actually brought their estimator in from Birmingham, and he walked all the properties and did the GIS on it. And,
It was
gave us
also
a really
nice
good type.
in that we established per, was it a square mile or acreage price
Per acre.
for, in the event we would reduce or add properties later on.
Oh, that's great.
We got caught with the invitation to bid, and somebody bid the project, and I had no real statement of qualifications, and I couldn't evaluate their
Right.
equipment, how much equipment did they
Right.
actually have, how many
Right.
employees. So it just got to the point that we kind of had to go that route.
I wanted to talk to the guys who are actually gonna be working with my crew. My group, I wanted to make sure that, their personalities didn't clash. And that was the point of the interview too.
Is that mowing only, or is it landscaping too?
Just mowing on.
We've done landscaping. Julie just did one. We went ahead and did landscaping. Well, especially, and the reason we did it on the landscaping was because we've had all these plants put in for streetscapes. And so even our guys aren't really necessarily sure how they should maintain those. So that was part of the whole RFP process, was explained to us how you would maintain these to make them look like this.
So as a hypothetical, if your RFP has a piggyback contract on it, clause, and you're in Knoxville with her, she could basically just piggyback off of yours. I mean, as a hypothetical, I'm kind of new. Is that something that they could do?
The problem with piggybacking is the company's they're maybe not nationwide. Now, the company that we chose, they would be in that area, but you have to be careful that if you're piggybacking, that company actually works in your area.
And then the workload too.
Hypothetically, yes. There would need to be like a clause in their contract that would allow that, and then you would also need to do your own, yeah.
Well, I got one. I just did a mowing contract, and it's only for cutting the grass only. This guy, he bid it upside down already in the contract, but he just like begged, I can do it. And since I'm a little weird bidder, you're not gonna let me have it? So I'm telling myself, look, why don't you just wait till next year and try it again? But right now, I do not want to go to enter a contract and you gonna pay us. But he's like, Ms. James, I want it. I can do it. And I'm like, okay, look, I'm not gonna argue with you. If you say you can do it, then you do it. But now we got trouble.
Right. Well, and that's where your contract administration then comes in, where you can document all of those things. All right, do we have anything else?
We're looking at call it a grass harvesting opportunity at one of our airports.
Oh, that's interesting.
Someone will actually come in, cut it, take it, pay us. It's sort of a lease. It's kind of unusual.
So like hay bales and that kind of thing?
If that's how they want to use it, they could hay bale it, they could mulch it. I'm not a grass expert. I don't know what you do. As long as you pay us. So it's a little weird because we're trying to figure out it's going to be a multi-year agreement because you have to seed it and fertilize it. And it's got to get better over time. And right now it's lousy grass, and in 5 years it'll be great grass. We'll see how it goes.
Wow. Yeah, we'll hope to hear some more about that if that works for you. Great. Anything else on mowing? All right, this next slide is just, the last one I've got is just for information purposes. Carl talked a little bit about QBS this morning with with one of the practices that that NIGP put out as far as that. And this last winter, I was asked by Debbie, who we've been asked to send one or two people to the Tennessee Board of Architectural and Engineering Examiners, who were updating the QBS practices, or the QBS guidelines that MTAS had out for a number of years. And I guess there had been some, I don't even know what happened. I don't even know what the history is of it. But anyway, Terry McKee and I helped coordinate on that. So you can find that information on that website that's there if you want to take a photo of that. It's very, very similar to what MTAS has had out for a number of years. We added a few things and took away. But it's important to know for you and your departments that the A&E board knows that this is part of the law and they are expecting it to happen. Period. Yes. So, when your departments are trying to go ahead and say, oh, we don't need to bid engineering services, or we don't need to compete that, be sure they know that there are engineers that are expecting to, when they see you doing a new project, that they're going to wonder, hey, why didn't we have an opportunity at that? So that was just for your information, one of the things that happened this year. Lady? Yes.
So if, say our school district wants to use the same architect, they could basically put out an RFP for architectural services.
You have to use
for RFQ for architectural.
Yeah, request for qualifications.
So that then they can then use that architect for that year with the option to renew, or would they need to, every job, put out an RFQ?
The law itself is a little vague, but I would, more than a little vague. But I would say probably project-based more than.
Unless you worded it differently.
Unless you worded it differently. Yeah.
Unless it was like an on-call.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's what I would think you have to do. Yeah.
It was an on-call type of thing.
Because I know that our school district favors, they use one. I probably shouldn't be saying this, but this is like Vegas, right?
Yeah.
So Lori, so you said they expect these to be competed.
Well,
but the law doesn't require that.
It does for
professional
qualifications. That they have. Yeah.
I have an engineering background, so I can be the bad guy for a second. And in my former life at Memphis International, I was in the construction and engineering group, and we actually did our own procurement for this very reason.
Right.
And the key is that whatever you spell out in your RFQ, that's what you're going to use the service for. So if you say we want an on-call architect, and if your policy allows that, you can use it for whatever you want. And at Memphis International, we did use and do use an on-call for, call it smaller projects. We didn't set a dollar threshold, but it's understood that we're not going to use this to design some, $100 million parking garage, for example. So where we have sizable capital improvement projects, new buildings, major renovations, and things like that, we go out for an individual selection using QBS. And when we need an on-call service that may be a 5 or 7 or 3-year contract or whatever, it's clear to the community that we're going to use this kind of however we need to. And there have been a few occasions where we do some of the larger projects, if you will, under the on-call because it became time sensitive and we didn't have time to go solicit an architect or an engineer. But it's really just a matter of explaining to the community exactly what the scoring criteria is. You're going to be judged on your qualifications, you're going to be judged on your relationships with your subs, you're going to be judged on whether you've done similar work. Have you done airport work? Have you done street work? Whatever you want them to do. You just spell it out in there. Where you get in trouble is if you try to then give that entity work that wasn't generally included in the RFQ.
Right, and one of the vagaries of this is how much is really kind of an add-on to what you have. So if you've got a company that designed the original building and 10 years later you want to do an addition to that building, is it okay to just go with that original company? You know, if you talk to my operations department, yeah, sure, absolutely.
It's sole source, right?
Yeah, it's sole source, completely.
They know our building.
Exactly. So yeah, if you look at our processes, my group pushes back against all of that, and I'll be lucky to do a QDS thing for the entire time I'm ever there. So, so just so you know, I'm telling you this, and I'm probably not going to manage to comply.
The textbook answers.
And the other thing to kind of note is that when we talk about the best practice from NIGP, it does not speak favorably of QPS. So that's the other thing to note. Just know that we are, because of our laws and requirements, we are not quite in the, you can't quite depend on that practice from NIGP in this case.
What is that? What is the NIGP statement have
Just
against QPS?
Well, just basically that it encourages non-competitiveness.
Yeah, because you can't ask for price.
Right. So, and they would prefer to be open with those pricing issues and that kind of thing.
And the federal government still requires it for the most part as well,
That's true.
because if you have grant money, I know with FTA, we have to use the QBS process.
All right. So that's the end of the questions that were submitted ahead of time. We have about 5 minutes left. Does anybody else have any questions that you want to ask of the group? All right. Bryant does.
Bryant.
If everybody wants to break, I can hold this. But here's a thought from this morning. The program from the lawyer, who I thought was excellent. Somebody remind me her name? She said something that.
I'm sorry, sir. What's your name and where are you from?
Oh. Brian Wilcox, City of Franklin.
Welcome.
When she was talking about the evaluation team and conflicts of interest and that sort of thing, it triggered a thought of whether the evaluation team should be involved with authoring the RFP. And I hadn't really thought about it from that point of view. It may be not something that she said directly, but it just triggered a thought in my head. And I don't think of myself as a subject matter expert. I think of the purchasing function as more facilitating. We rely on the end user department to be the subject matter expert. We rely on them for the technical content of the RFP. Am I speaking blasphemy here, or are you all with me on this? So it's reasonable, isn't it, that the same people that write the RFP will be evaluating, yes?
Yes.
But I think what her point was, or what maybe it was one of you who in the room said this, is that could the evaluators be writing the RFP in such a way to steer the business toward a supplier or service provider that doesn't have a lot of competition, I guess is one way to put it. And
wouldn't that be every type of spec that comes in your organization?
I just really hadn't.
You just
I
described taser brand tasers.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't know that you described taser brand tasers because I don't know jack crap about tasers.
Well, and that's
But any procurement you buy, you're trusting that they have just as much rules and ethics as you do.
Right.
And that's one thing that it came up, I think, at Forum too, with the FBI guy that did the red alerts or I mean, he mentioned that too, that you have to be careful because they might be trying to gear it towards whoever they want to get a kickback from. But it's same thing. That's a really good question, Brian.
One of the things that I have seen, I have not practiced it, but I have seen described is creating your specifications with, having your evaluation team kind of be the ones to create your specifications. So you're involved with that kind of from the beginning as part of the evaluation team. As I said, I have not practiced that, so I don't have a good way to tell you that it has worked or not. But I've seen that described and thought that that could be a useful thing at times, so that you're getting your evaluation team in on the very front end of creating the RFP, creating the questions that they're going to be evaluated on, and those kinds of
Selection
things.
criteria.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that way they, it's all been part of the group, and you're kind of developing all of that together. So there's less of an opportunity for bias from one person.
One person, yeah.
So can we clarify where we are in the room? Who is writing everything from the scratch with a team of people, and who is not? Who's doing it at their desk by themselves? Who's using a team of people when they do the RFP?
What if you're a mixed mix?
Am I doing it wrong? I'm sending it tonight from day one when I get the requisition. Hey, Chad, who's on your evaluation team? I don't even open a template until I know who his evaluation team is, because they're going to help me through the whole process. And then I send it back and say, okay, well, the evaluation criteria is still highlighted. I still don't know what's important to you. Is their qualifications more important? Is your timeline of delivery more important? Guys, you're not answering my questions. And then I go to Penny and say, hey, Penny, we still don't have this out yet because I'm waiting for them to get back to me. I've asked them the same question 3 times, and I'm moving on to my next rec. So from the beginning, I've got a team working with my RV the whole time.
We work with other department contractors, we don't work with the evaluation.
On the evaluation team, to his point, we use the person from the department to work with the procurement specialist, but I want someone on that team that has nothing to do with it, no idea what we're doing, when they come in that room, they've read the spec, when they come in that room, they would want them to tell us what they're gonna do for us so that they can vote without any kind of bias about it.
You can have voting and non-voting people on there, but the ones that vote need to be a cross section so that you're not getting that bias.
Right.
That's bias, like Eric said. I mean, you get the same engineers in there, they're gonna give you the same person every time.
On the landscape, on the mower, I used to find it.
Hey,
Yeah,
yeah, because they have jobs, they know exactly what's going on.
Yeah. They have signed.
That's true.
About 100 years ago, in an NRGP class, they suggested too, if it's a really technical spec, or if you're kind of question the spec, you can do an RFI and send that out to people, and let them
See what is available.
They'll come back and say, yeah, that's written by one company only. That's another option. I've never really done that.
When you send it out, it's written by one company, there should be another one saying, hey, you got this one written too tight around.
Right.
Yeah.
And they'll let you know.
Oh, yeah.
They'll let you know.
Yeah.
They don't just, you're scoping from one person.
Yep, yeah, we've run into that, especially like with fire trucks.
We do this a lot.
We're starting to.
Thank you.
Good question, Ryan.
All right, do we have any other questions? We have 30 seconds. All right, thank you, everybody. Appreciate your thoughts.